can I just say thank you from the very bottom of my heart. I'm thrilled with this award, absolutely thrilled. I think the EAPC is never far from my mind at any time, and hasn't been for the last few years. But I'm delighted, and thank you very, very much indeed. It takes me back a long way, as you realise. I feel a little bit of a dinosaur at present, just brought out from the museum. But I wondered if I could just share with you some of the thoughts, memories, if you like, of what it was like when we started, think about what's happened in the meantime, and then some ideas, an old man's musings, if you like, before I finish, but I won't be long. The thing that was most obvious to us all, way back in 1988, and of course before that when we were working on it, was how little people understood about palliative care, hospice care. You'd think everybody knew something about it, maybe not the name. But we found that we were almost missionaries. We were saying to people, this is really important. Really? Why? Well, people are dying in pain. I don't think they are. Relatives are broken-hearted and don't know what to do. I don't think that's true. And everything we said to people, they denied it and said there was no problem whatsoever. The interesting thing was, of course, that we noticed that our fellow doctors and nurses who were not in this now specialty, when anybody of their family was very ill, they came along to us. They didn't stay in the big hospitals. They sort of sensed that something could be done. So my memory of those early days was defining hospice until we were tired of it, trying to get a really succinct definition, and you're doing the same today, I know that very well, and we're still going over the same ground, and people are still being as non-receptive in many respects. I think what troubled me too was the feeling that most nurses had a deep inner feeling that they knew that more could be done, should be done, but wasn't being done. And most of my medical colleagues were absolutely certain that their care was perfect. There was nothing they could learn, nothing they could give. And this was very difficult. How could we get through to them? Of course, in those days, we also had huge problems of the availability of opioids. Now, I know somebody's going to say, well, we still have. Yes, but nothing to what it was. And that was made worse by the fact that a large number of ignorant doctors and nurses, they were ignorant, it was their fault, believed that by giving simple doses of opioids, not necessarily large doses, we were of course producing addiction. And it was very difficult to persuade them that there's no addiction when they had pain. It was very difficult to convince people that you could be cared for at home, and we needed good services to do that. So there was a great wall of unknown and skepticism and some doubts, coupled with but we do it well already. All that changed, and I think making it a specialty, getting it into universities, was a huge move forward. At the time, many of our colleagues, yes, even EAPC colleagues, were saying, well, we don't really want to get involved in the academic world. But we were already in the academic world, and so I think that was a good thing. And now I just can't count the number of chairs there are in palliative medicine or palliative nursing. And this, I believe, has been one of the great, great advances, which has had an effect not just in Europe, and it has there, but throughout the world. I have been enormously privileged to be invited, when I was able to do so, and visit many, many countries around the world, and to see what they're doing, the innovations, the imaginative care. This has been a wonderful experience, and a lot of it stemmed from EAPC. It sounds a funny thing to say, but our first meeting was in Paris. I think it must have been 88 or maybe 89. And to say that there were 1,000 people there has staggered people. What, so many people interested? Well, the answer was there was far, far more than 1,000 interested. And this, I think, was what won over governments. So I look back and I think, teaching people about opioids, telling people that this is for the patient and for the family, and this is not an optional extra. This is basic, fundamental, compassionate care, and there's nothing less is acceptable. What's happened in between? Well, a lot of things. We've talked about the number of new services, new units, different types. I think most exciting to me is dealing with different types and groups of people. the intellectually incapacitated, the prisoners in jails and prisons, people with AIDS and HIV, people with long, protracted illnesses, which we know are fatal eventually, but it's a long, long, long process, and saying that we have something for them as quite distinct from the short term, often with a malignancy. I think what has also impressed me in recent years, because we didn't have it, is the growth of diagnostic miracles. All the scanners and the isotopes and all the other things we can do now, which I don't understand at all those are so important. But of course it is meaning earlier diagnosis, it is meaning a longer trajectory, and I'm not sure that we are fully geared up for these varying lengths, the intensive care at the end, but what about the one that goes on for, no, not months, years? I think we have a problem there. It's exciting that we now have so many coming into the profession, but now I'm going to say something very dangerous. I'm a bit upset and worried that so few men are coming into it as doctors, and so many of our doctors, first-class ladies, are women doctors coming in. They're doing a marvellous job, and I don't doubt that. But we don't want it to be seen as a female care, which is nothing relevant for men. It is, it's for us all. And of course there's different shift patterns for the ladies because of their other commitments. So I'm not against ladies coming into the thing, far from it, but I'm a little worried that that may be a move in which people are going to misunderstand us. I'm very concerned too that we should do even more research than we've done. Now, way back in 1988, the question was, what research? What should we do? What can we do? Who's going to fund it? Well, of course, those days are gone. Now, as a result of the Journal of Palliative Medicine, now as a result of a lot of very generous grants from the various sources, particularly pharmaceutical industry, we now have wonderful research. It's strong, it's good evidence, it's robust in every way. Now, nothing less than that is good enough for palliative medicine. And God help anybody that says you can't do research with dying patients. They are longing to be useful, and we've got to learn from them. There's nothing unkind about this. This is part of our compassion, is to say, well, we will do for you what we can, but we hope out of this better is going to come for others. I would like us to see us doing much more work on teaching methodology. How do we get through to the skeptics? How do we get through to those thousands of doctors, certainly in Britain, who are certain that they're doing this job very well indeed? I still see a lot of doctors. I'm impressed by the number that say to me, well, I don't need any help myself, but it's the nurses that we need. Patients do need nurses, as you know. I mean, I frankly know everything about palliative medicine that you do, Derek. Not true, because I've been privileged to learn, to study, and to be with people that have taught me a lot more. But we must get over the feeling that this is a prescribing exercise. Palliative care is just, what dose of opioids do you give? It has nothing to do with that. It's a relationship. And I believe that we've got to get back to seeing that it must be patient-centered, obvious as that is. Why do I say that? Because in every country I've gone to, and particularly in Europe nowadays, we find that it's finance-directed, finance-given. Can we afford to do this? That is not the question. The real question is, can we afford not to do this? Can we come back to the old days, way back in 1988, and recognize that palliative medicine isn't just another branch of medicine. Its principles are the integral principles of all care. Patient-centered, patient first, us the professional second, learning from every patient, recording from every patient, and becoming close to them in an intimate way of sharing ourselves as they share themselves with us. And my last thought, and you're probably all expecting this one, is I happen to be somebody whose faith means an enormous lot to them. I accept that that doesn't apply to everybody, of course. I've gone through my bleak days of having no faith, but I do hope that we're going to keep marrying our faith to, marrying our practice to our faith, whatever that is, whatever our denomination, whatever our religion is, and also recognizing that there is a degree of spirituality and spiritual need in every single person that we ever go and sit beside. And if we forget that, we're just going to become old-fashioned prescribers. But it's the being there that is really what matters. But however, thank you again for this wonderful prize, and I'm quite delighted. And thank you for listening to me.